Well, as you join us with a perception, especially when you know it's going to be about who you are and what is going to be your surrounding. A thought, maybe a thought with many, many, many questions and just about some simple answers. Reinvent. Reinvent the company culture and the CHRO's action plan to do so. That's exactly what we are about to discuss today. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, to each one of you. I'm very happy and delighted to welcome you here at the first ever virtual roundtable with LinkedIn and all that with the ET Edge, an Economic Times initiative. The date 22nd Feb has come in at the right time as we speak about what has happened over the last couple of years and what is going to come our way in the coming years. Now, a big question, a big thought. I'm just going to give you a little bit of reflections on what has happened precisely in India. Now, the culture of work from home was very new, very, very new back in here. But in the West, they're used to it. But what more? It gave you a little bit of liberty to go to different places where you like and work from there. But the big question that the team had, the enterprise team, about security, then came in the thought process that yes, you know what, the productivity is increased, so as much more. The COVID 19 pandemic has a huge impact on the working landscape. You know it, I know it, the world is aware of it. As companies have been forced to activate distributed and at the same time remote workforces at a rate never seen before. And as I speak, I have the whole data here which talks about people working and not traveling on a holiday from remote places. The internet and the speed of internet has increased drastically in remote areas which you can never ever imagine. Many aspects of the workplace will never be the same again. I'm sure you, as I'm speaking about it, you have a smile because I know when your workplace where you work from at home has got much more. That photo frame, that a bit of greenery around it. It's changed, right? An organization's ability to deliver an employee experience, giving employees the flexibility to work where and how they prefer is picking up momentum every single day. And it's very joyful. Trust me, it's very joyful. If I want to be on the beach and I'm not getting the freedom because I'm in Bangalore, why not? Now I have the chance. If you want to be in the mountains and witness mountain peaks while you wake up to work, which you're not getting here in Bombay, why not? Now is your time. In fact, LinkedIn's recent Future of Work B2B perception study by the research firm GFK states that 80%, that's right, 80% business leaders in India feel pressured to offer greater flexibility today. Now, flexible working has emerged as the top priority in the new world of work. And the business leaders see this as an opportunity to hire more diverse talent and improve business performance. I am a true example of it. I've seen things go and it's become very, very flexible. Now, with 82% of professionals in India are considering a job change in the year 2022. Now, that is a graph number that you can't imagine. 82% of professionals. It has become imperative to focus on an employee's motivations. And is it true that talent is in the driver's seat today? It had to be someday. It has come in now. It's come in the hard way, but it is coming at the right time. Thus, CHROs constantly face the pressure of building a future oriented corporate culture that ensures business success and at the same time employee satisfaction, which indeed is very important. Now, all this has been summed up with perceptions of every individual, the employees. In this rapidly changing landscape, the companies are aiming to become more agile and adaptable so that they can survive and thrive. And I don't see a point where they should stop because it's a win win for both the organization and at the same time for the employees. And that's exactly what we're here for. I'm sure you have a bunch of questions, and that is why we let you question to our panelists and our moderator. And our moderator will make sure that most of your questions are answered. It's going to be a peek through what is tomorrow. I welcome you again to the CHRO's action plan to reinvent company culture. And let's get straight into what are we really discussing about, apart from all the questions that you have. Is the CHROs need to treat new culture as a business challenge. When you think of the word new, there's a whole lot of things that come in. Your idea, many other ideas. So that is going to be a business challenge. Priority, flexible working arrangements. Where do you want to work from? Including the work policies and working models. Because end of the day, security of your data of an organization is indeed the most important aspect. Ensuring the well-beings of employees. Now that is very important because the mental health has taken a inclined justice and journey in the last 3 years. We were at 7.2% in the year 2020, and now we are at the about 14%, doubled up in the last 2 years, which is to go 22% in the next 1 year. So yes, well-being of employees, just not physically, emotionally, but also mentally, or rather I use the word mind wellness. Then comes in the next important subject is creating an environment that helps employees to learn and grow. Now, what's the point of working somewhere where your learning has stopped? Would you enjoy that? I wouldn't enjoy that. It's okay to clap for someone, then get clapped. Because the moment you clap for someone, you are inclined towards learning. And if somebody's clapping for you and the same thing repeats every day, you stop learning, you stop growing. So what is that new aspect come in picture? And the last one is focusing on strategies and technologies to help organizations hire, retain better. Now that is a subject of a big thought. Retaining the members, adjust to changes, and have a dynamic approach. I get goosebumps as I speak about it because that's the culture of corporate that we are looking into, and that is why the action plan to reinvent company culture. And I'm very happy and delighted, and you should be as well, because the set of panelists we have bring about the wholesome of experience. I give you a little highlight of what it'll look like. So without further ado, let's get straight into welcoming our panelists first, and of course then the moderator who holds the key for this very interesting conversation. So who's joining us now? Well, joining us now is Anirban, who is the global head of HR business partner with Microland, and he is the PGDPM and IR from my hometown, Excelride Jamshedpur. A class of 95-97 batch, has about 25 years of experience in the industry. Organizations like PwC, I love the client, Accenture, I've grown up with them, and CGI as well. So I'm very happy and very, very delighted to welcome our first panelist, and that is Mr. Anirban Mukherjee, Global Head Human Resources, Business Partner for Microland Limited. And I welcome him with a round of applause because he's got a lot more to share about it. Now let's go on, call the next our panelist. Well, is a global head of HR at UST and is responsible for all human capital needs of organization that operates across the multiple regulatory and at the same time also make sure that you get to understand the labor environments across the globe. She's also had 2 decades of experience, consist of a variety of senior leadership positions across various industries with a blend of sales, operations, and a human resources disciplines. And that makes it interesting to know what her perception is about the culture change. So very happy to welcome here again, the one, is Kavita Kurup, Global Head Human Resources, UST Global Inc. here with us right now. Very happy to have you here, ma'am. Let's move on to the next speaker very quickly, and a panelist. And the person who's joining us is Mr. Alok Mehta, Executive Director and Head for Human Resources at Hexagon Capability Center, India. Has about 28 years of professional experience across Indian and multinational companies in local, regional, and global leadership roles. So I'm very happy to welcome here Mr. Alok Mehta, Executive Director, Human Resources, Hexagon Capability Center India Private Limited. And the next, joining us is our next panelist. Well, she is the CHRO Global for AGS Health. In her role, she manages all gamut of HR, CSR, D&I, branding and communication. Now that is playing multi-different roles. Okay? She has more than 25 years of experience and progressive experience in the talent delivery, recruitment, talent management, benefits, compensation, staffing, diversity, and inclusion. Now that is multi-role all-rounder. I please welcome here with a round of applause, if you're joining us right now, is Ekta Singh, CHRO, AGS Health. And now it's time to welcome the person, a moderator, because she holds the key for every bit of conversation that you want to hear and everything ahead of the same. Very happy to welcome, with a smile that she's continued to have right now throughout the morning, is our Senior Director, Talent and Learning Solutions at LinkedIn, Ruchi Anand, as part of the senior leadership team at LinkedIn India. She is diverse in experience and done so much more all over the globe, and focuses in the lead and scale up the talent and learning solutions business, and to help LinkedIn fuel the region's talent economy with about 20 years of experience. She has held various leadership positions in organizations like the InfoEdge, Naukri.com, Auto Bridge, and the GTL Limited. We're happy to lead the way into the conversation. Please welcome our moderator, Ruchi Anand, Senior Director, Talent and Learning Solutions at LinkedIn. And Ruchi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Miten. This was such an energizing opening and context setting. I really enjoyed listening to you, and you've beautifully set the context for us. So thank you so much. I mean, I think a round of applause to you for such a fantastic opening, Miten. And, thank you so much. And I'm really excited. Good morning, everyone. I am very excited to host our wonderful panel of CHROs. In fact, what I would call them, these are four leading forward-looking CHROs, and let's join them and let's get deeper insights from them as they ideate, plan, and execute on what the future of work looks like and what does it look like for their organizations as we find ourselves in a time where we can easily say that company culture is having a watershed moment. So how do they reinvent their company culture while building more flexible and equitable organizations? In fact, there were some great points and stats that Miten shared. I'll just add, one more point to that. As per LinkedIn's Global Talent Trends report, which was launched a few weeks ago, this human-centered company culture that we've been talking about is being forged and has some recurring characteristics, which is flexibility, asynchrony, trust, belonging, and a holistic focus on well-being. So with so much happening, and we heard him also talk about how companies have to attract, retain, as well as grow their talent, and to bring sustained success and make sure that companies are growing, businesses are growing, and their talent is also thriving. So CHROs are constantly faced with this pressure of building this future-oriented corporate culture. So now let's just dive deep in, and let me start and open by asking one question, which is, open to all four of you. Let's start by understanding what has been your biggest learning since you started, or you've been on this journey of reinventing your company culture to meet the expectations of diverse talent. Kavita, why don't we start with you? Would love to hear from you. What's been your biggest learning?
Sure, Ruchi, thank you. And it's lovely being here. So in the last several months, really the relationship between the organization and the employees has fundamentally transformed due to several factors. And this has led us at USG, and I'm sure several other organizations as well, to start reinventing the org culture. Now, these factors were primarily the impact of social justice movements like Black Lives Matter, the farmer protest in India, protecting trans youth, and so many more. The pandemic, of course, now it's become a part and parcel of our daily lives, but it's very difficult to believe we lived very different lives just 2 years ago. And third is the digital evolution, which has dramatically accelerated the pace of change, right? And hence the need to reinvent the culture. So, my learning is that the new relationship or the model of engagement between employees and organizations will be redefined along three vectors: a shared dream or purpose, radical flexibility, and deeper connections. We will be focusing more on equity and inclusion, giving employees more control over where, when, and how much they work, Uberization of talent, and emergence of the alternate workforce models or gig economy. And we are getting more involved in supporting life experiences, not just the employee experiences. So, how does work become a subset of life rather than being, so we no longer will talk about work life balance, but how does it just become part of life that you live every single day?
Wonderful. Very well said, Kavita. In fact, we will probably deep dive a little more when you spoke about Uberization of talent as well, and especially on flexibility as well. So let's go to you, Alok. Alok, what are your thoughts on this? What's been your biggest learning?
Actually, learning never stops, and I think pandemic just kind of accelerated learning for all of us. Some bit of it, I'm sure, would be repetition, because in terms of the impact on people has been similar across organizations. But so let me again talk about three things. One was that bottlenecks for any change that you want to bring about, unfortunately, are always at the top of the bottle. So most of us here and our colleagues and our peers are responsible for either resisting change or accelerating change. So that is one big learning that hits home very hard, but it's a fact. The other one, when you look at diverse talent, it's not about how much they need to fit in, but is as much about our willingness to accept them the way they are. And that's been a huge, huge learning for all of us in the company, and I'm sure again in many companies. The third one that, again, I'd like to point out as a separate one is that leading or managing a diverse team leads to personal growth. I think, unfortunately, some of us who attained age of whatever and number of years of whatever feel that now growth stops. I'm done. But unfortunately, we need to keep that needle constantly moving. And the more diverse teams you manage, that much more you grow and that much more faster you grow. So yeah, in a way, all this kind of summarize the need for us to start our entire diversity and acceptance journey. So I don't call it D&I in our company, we call it diversity and acceptance. So the 2 years has been, in a way, a very watershed 2 years in multiple ways, but from a culture standpoint, huge, huge learning for all of us in leadership positions.
Thank you, Alok. Very well said. It's really about our own journeys as well, right? As we bring in diverse talent, it's about how the entire environment, and how that's only when we can actually make diverse talent thrive. And what's our learning, and we all know there's enough business case around how diversity fuels innovation and fresh thinking. So that's great. Ekta, over to you. Would love to hear your thoughts on what's been your biggest learning.
Thank you so much, Ruchi. So I think when it comes to learning, quite a few similarities are definitely there between our other panelists and I. However, the ones that are different is what I'll talk about. Needless to say, diversity inclusion comes at the top of the agenda. But I think what the last 2 years have taught me personally is that we are all very agile as human beings. The disruption that we've gone through is accelerated pace, and I coming from the healthcare background, as you very well know, with the regulatory environment in US, there is hardly any scope for people to work from home, forget flexibility of any sorts, right? To going and working 100% from home, literally in the matter of just the weekend. Was a huge achievement. What I learned was that we are all extremely community-centric people. We were all coming together for the first time as though we'd never come together in India before, at least not that I had seen at this scale, right? So that's my number one learning. My number two is that you just have to ask for help. Sometimes that's all you need to, to the point that mental well-being has become a conversation in the forefront. I mean, imagine having this conversation 2 years ago, impossible. It was like, oh my God, such a taboo topic to pick up. Today, we have that conversation in every forum that we are meeting. So that's my second learning, that be open to the fact that things change, and they change at such a fast pace that if you don't catch up, you'll be left behind. And third, I really liked what Mithun said, be the one that's clapping, because then you are learning. I really loved it. I mean, it didn't sink is as much as I want it to sink, but I think it will, that we've become an organization that is celebrating learning for the first time. We are an organization in the last 2 years that have been celebrating new ways of learning. We actually moved platforms during these last 2 years. We went into micro learning, which was unheard of before. And most important, we went into catalog learning. So for me, I think it's all about learning in the last 2 years. And it just is a continuous roller coaster, including today. I love the diversity and acceptance as well. Thank you.
Wonderful, Ekta. I think so many takeaways, and we are going to go deeper into understanding, because as I go with further with my questions, we'd love to hear more specific examples of how you've been implementing some of this within your organization for our audience to take away. But love this around community, how we are community centric, and yes, mental health. Talk about the focus even in the budget, right? I mean, look at where we've come, and I think there's such a long way to go. Thank you, Anirvan. Over to you. What's been your biggest learning as you reinvent company culture?
Really difficult when I have so many distinguished speakers who have covered so many of the points. So I think all the points that were called out, we have experienced in Microland, and we have gone through that journey pretty much similar to all the others. But I would like to, stress on two things, just to complement the points that were called out. One is that, while we are based out of Bangalore, we are a global organization. And I think one of the learnings from the pandemic was that, we hit crisis points in different ways in different geographies. So sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that, there is a one size fits all approach, and that's not the case. It goes back to being, diverse and equitable and inclusive in a different dimension across geographies and nationalities. And I think, we learn to cater to the needs of our different communities of microlanders in different countries in slightly different ways, depending on what is the help that was required. So I think, that was one takeaway. And how we engaged. We had actually created something called Winning Workplace, which we had implemented for ourselves, which is winning how we work and also, of course, people prioritize, which is putting employees first. Normally, you tend to balance your three stakeholders, right? Investors, customers, and employees. There was a very conscious, strategic decision taken by our leadership to prioritize people. And that's what we did. And everything came from there. And as a result of this winning workplace, which flowed from there, we actually were able to help a lot of our customers who would otherwise have been struggling through. So we were able to help them out in that way. I think the other second thing that came through is, again, it is, every organization would have in some form or shape talked about employee wellness, help them during vaccinations, allowed work from home when they didn't allow it before, or thought it was impossible, and suddenly it was becoming possible. But I think the other key takeaway, for us was how do you actually tap into something that is unique to you and make sure that is experienced by the employees. And what we found was that in Microland, it was all about the family culture. the relationship culture. And that meant as an organization, if we went on a discretionary basis, going over and beyond what is required in the policy or in the letter of the law to kind of help somebody, you just did it. And we feel and we believe that this is a core value for us. And this was very, very important during this time of crisis, right? And what it means in terms of work, a lot of the things have already been talked about. And I think we will never go back to the old normal, right? That's there. That's not going to happen. So there is going to be a new normal. There is going to be a hybrid model of working. We have worked out a role-based way in which we are going to implement the hybrid model. And one of the very important things that we have is how do we ensure that the culture of micromanagement, which is our secret sauce, how is that maintained across the organization and even increased, even as we work in a more virtual setup. Focus will be on that as we move forward.
Thank you, Anirban. I agree with you, and especially on the point of family culture. One is, of course, coming together, and also I think to what Ekta also shared, right, of a community-centric, how we are community-centric, and how our this whole thing of coming together in the time of crisis has really been front and center. The other thing is, I think you'll all agree that we all now get to know our employees so much better with their families, and seeing them in their living rooms or on their dining table with their children coming in, and knowing their families so much better. So I think the other thing for sure has been that it has brought all of us closer together for sure. So and Anirban, yes, for sure, I will kind of make sure the next questions we start first with you. However, would you want to just check? I don't know, I felt there was an echo from your end. So maybe if there's if the tech team can also just check and help. Meanwhile, I'll just move with the next question. And since we've been talking a lot about flexibility as well, Kavita, let me start this with you. I just wanted to kind of go deeper into this aspect of flexibility. And we know that it's a path to building a workforce that focuses more on performance today than presentism, right? It's more about how people are performing, and we've seen productivity levels have gone up. I think you also mentioned that. How have you been able to bring about some policies? Because flex work puts in new demands on company culture, right? And it also is important that how do we create an equitable experience within the organization? And there will be some roles which can be flexible. There won't be roles which will be flexible. So tell us a little more in terms of what are the policies and what have you done to be able to bring that about?
Sure, Ruchi. So I think one of the things that we did very initially, right, as soon as we got into the pandemic and people started working from home, is that we really gave associates, of course, it would, as you said, right, certain roles you can and certain roles you can't, but we tried to give people the flexibility to design their work days so that they could blend their home priorities into the day, right? Because you had online school happening at the same time, you had no maids, no cooks, so you had to do a lot of stuff. At home, there was elder care that was taking place, child care that was taking place. And that was one of the big asks that we also received from our employees, saying that, it's not like we don't want to work, just let us decide what our 8 hours would be. And, if we are able to get that flexibility, then it would help to a large extent. And we did do that for a lot of our roles. And wherever we did, where the clients were also on board with practicing that, because they were facing the same issues in their organizations, we saw there was not just an increase in productivity, but also a startling increase in accountability. People started taking on a lot more because they were able to design days along with it. The second was we never, when we had the Zoom calls, while we say we have to be on camera, we said it's fine if your child sitting next to you and doing their homework at the same time. We included them. In fact, my nephew has an imaginary boss within UST called Mr. Goose. So he comes in and does a little conversation once in a way when I'm doing it with my team, and he will sit very sagely making notes. So, you try and bring in those little aspects which aren't really going to harm the conversation. You still get the work done, but you still feel like, okay, hey, you're giving something more back, and it's an easy win. Another exciting thing that we did was we created a virtual version of our entire campus where associates could create their avatars, and also all our conferences, celebrations, conclaves are done using this virtual experience with exciting VR technology. So everyone has their own avatar. So if you have a 4-day event, you actually can go change the clothes that you wear, the hair that you do, as much as you would do if you were meeting in person. So the water cooler conversations, all the gossip sessions, you can have small breakout rooms. All that social interaction makes sure that the work doesn't become boring. Because, other than you're on mute, which is you hear at least once a day when you're on your Zoom calls, it becomes very transactional in nature. You don't really do the polite conversation anymore on Zoom. So we created this environment where you could just go and have a chat with someone who's in a virtual context and chat away and just, have those side conversations as well.
Wonderful. I love to experience something like this where virtual avatars and getting to pick different looks for 4 days of a conference. I think that would be so exciting.
It's as painful as picking it out in real life.
I'm sure. I'm sure there should be dress rehearsals there as well. So. Great. Anirban, do we have you back? Yeah. So, I think there was a little bit of a tech issue. We just wanted to, I'll just probably, same question what I've just asked Kavita. We're just going deeper into understanding flexibility a little more. And what does flexibility look like for your organization? And how have you, what are the few things that you've done within Microland?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
And is it echoing in any way?
No, I think it's good now. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Sorry if it had echoed in the past and you couldn't hear me. So
Nice.
So I think specifically to your two questions, one is we have also created a virtual organization where it's called the Microland One app. It's actually an award-winning app, and the whole organization can come together. It is possible for our leadership, starting with our CEO and other leaders, to be able to broadcast and to message to all the people directly on the app, and folks can directly interact with them on the app in a way that is transparent and visible across, including feedback on key decisions like when are we going back to office, just for example, okay, or on a new strategy or a structure which is getting launched. So people can give direct feedback and directly get into an conversation. You can have conversation threads, and we actually pick up a lot of ideas and suggestions, from some of those. We also have walls where people can more anonymously put in their comments, and we have cheers and places where you can actually recognize people, and do all of this virtually. Why? Because so much of our work is now happening from home. The physical proximity is not there. That's how the work has changed. So how do you build a connect on a more virtual or a digital way, where even if all the elements of physical proximity cannot be built in, substantially it can be built in, right? And the same goes for communities which are online and which can meet and plan and run their agendas, whatever that particular community is focused on. So there's a lot that we do in a digital way and enabling the organization to operate in that way. That is one of the enablers for working in a remote setup. The other aspect, of flexible working, which involves changes to policies and things like that, is all around allowing folks to pick some of the time on which they are going to work, and finally, based on their roles, allowing people a chance to either work from home permanently, or to actually come to office and work, or come to office as per a schedule and work, or come to office occasionally, and then build your engagement and connect models around that, treating office as a social hub. So how do you do that? And start working it through the details of that, right? So I think these are some of the key elements that go in together with a continuous pulse on our key theme, which is that we are an extended family and it's an extremely caring organization, and there are lots of people to reach out to, and lots of people to connect and build and deepen relationships. So I'll go back to some of the points that Kavita had said in her opening speech, and I think I echo all of them, in terms of some of the things that we are trying to do.
Great, thanks, Alok. Anirban, sorry. The point you spoke about with the Microland app that you have, and there is this, the constant communication with the leadership and the employees. I think this just goes on to say that even as we are building this flexible organization, communication is such a key lever to be able to make sure everyone is staying connected, and constantly the town halls or all hands, or just directly having this open forum, I think goes a long way in being giving employees that view of what's happening, as well as having this culture of listening to your employees. So I think you spoke about having those walls where that you're really kind of making sure that employee listening culture is built. Plus, also, I really like, I think this one line you said, that using office as a social hub. I think that is very much what's happening today, where we are giving the flexibility and giving the option for our employees to make the decision in terms of where and how and when they want to work, how they want to work, where they want to work. Coming together is something where now people also crave for those connections. So there's I think some great points both by you and Kavita. Let's pivot to understanding a little more about, we've been talking a lot about employee well-being. So Alok, let me ask you this. We've all just heard, I think we've just spoken about how employee performance has still been high in the midst of all of this. But with all these disruptions and these different waves and different challenges that keep coming at us, it's really had a very hard to reverse impact on workforce's health. So what are some of the strategies that have helped you maintain productivity as well as prioritize well-being in this hybrid world?
Yeah, I think this goes for all of us as well. We would have also experienced it. So let's not disengage ourselves from the workforce. We all were in it together. And what I noticed about myself, and therefore a reflection of what we saw in the company as well, was that I think initially productivity surged like no one's business. It was just almost, if there is something called 120%, it was there. But I think it dipped again, and eventually it has steadily kept itself at a healthy level, much earlier, much better than what it was earlier. So that has been my and our kind of an experience on productivity. What we did was we requested the teams to, within themselves, talk about dialogue and decide what are going to be the core R's that they would like to maintain as a team. So again, not thrust by anybody from leadership, but saying that you guys need to deliver, what you need to deliver, by when you got to do it. So figure out what your work day is going to look like, but at least those 3-4 R's, commit to yourselves that you'll be available for each other. So be it collaborative meetings, any updates, any stand-ups, whatever you want to do, but make sure that that core R is defined for everybody. In the same breath, also allowing for personal time. So while you define core R's, also very, very important, as I think Kavita said and somebody else also said, that if you have online classes and therefore need some attention for your children, please make sure that you set aside time for that and you're available for anything else that you need to do domestically. So that's the other thing that we kind of, in a way, encouraged people to do. Couple of things that I like to talk about, that even before the pandemic, we signed up with 2 important partners for us. One was an EAP partner, and the other one was an emotional well-being. EAP is the emotional well-being. The other one was the physical well-being partner. So, and this we did a few months before the pandemic. And what we saw was people using these 2 platforms to the hilt in the first 3-4 months of pandemic. Then it kind of dipped again, it picked up again. So our job as leaders was to encourage people to keep visiting this, subscribe to anything that you wish made sense to you. And again, there were so-called licenses, but we made it absolutely free for everybody, that please go ahead, utilize what you think is right for you, what's going to work for you, please go ahead and do it. Our job is to provide you options. You choose as much, as many that you think is going to work for you. From a learning standpoint, again, to make sure that that is a continuous thing, we signed up with a leading MOOC provider, and we created learning paths which were contextually relevant in the pandemic that was impacting all of us. So be it stress, anxiety, work-life integration. So I think Kavita also spoke about not calling it so much work-life balance. So we call it work-life integration because you can't segregate the two. Now, all the much more, you cannot. So we kind of made learning paths for all of that. For so-called people leaders, we created, again, learning paths on empathy, on sensitivity, on being more accommodating, being more caring. And one guiding principle, and this was in a way that something that I insisted, that being kind, caring, and understanding does not mean that no work happens. And this is a myth that many of us have lived through and lived with, in a way impacting our own emotional well-being. So I think taking care of yourself is not being selfish, and doesn't mean that work doesn't happen. Work will happen if you are well. Yeah, I think what also we did during this time was we launched our flagship leadership program. So I'm not going to brag about that, but I'm going to brag about one module which is focusing on self-awareness. So there are 3 modules, but the first one is focusing on self-awareness. This essentially gave us and gave the associates a peek into themselves, which they have not seen earlier. So hopefully we brought the whole fundamental of bringing feelings to the workplace. And no better time than doing this now, because if I don't have freedom to express what I'm going through, what is the kind of workplace I'm creating? So you talk of culture and all those lovely words, but I think it starts with this basic autonomy to be myself at my workplace. The last thing I think that probably what worked, and this is not something that I kind of did at my organization, but if I look around society, I think there was a sense of collective suffering and collective loss. So this whole thing that I'm in this with you didn't have to be taught, it was experienced. So I think, yeah, if I kind of just summarize all this together, this is what has worked for us in this extremely trying time.
Thank you, Alok. And there are quite a few actionable examples and takeaways here. In fact, I think what I hear from you is it's all about bringing your authentic selves, your whole selves to work. And that only happens the more we actually go deeper down to do some, self-reflection. And I think if there is this module on self-awareness, that I'm sure that requires the maximum lift, I'm sure, right? Going deeper and being able to kind of confront what you're feeling. And like we also see, I think one thing I learned during this time, especially when it comes to this whole, the number of emotions, we only say happy, sad, angry, but there are so many emotions. And how do we learn how to, only when you name it, you can tame it.
True.
Right? How do we really kind of understand that? I think that has been like a big learning for me personally in these last few years. So Ekta, let's hear from you. I know there's so much you've been doing in this space, and I'd heard you before as well. Would love to hear your thoughts, especially how have you been prioritizing employee well-being?
Sure, Ruchi, I will definitely be. But before I even start, I do want us all HR leaders to, hear ourselves out. We are talking about feelings, guys. I mean, when was the last time HR professionals were talking of feeling? I remember when I returned after a decade in US and I spoke to a leader and I said, I don't even remember what the context was, but my feedback was, I feel exactly, Alok, I was killed. I was killed as a person who's got emotions. I couldn't bring emotions to work. I couldn't feel, I had to fact everything. And imagine from there coming to a conversation where we are okay, not only okay about emotions, but we are saying, hey, all types of well-being is critical and emotional well-being is one of the many. So absolutely, coming to your question itself, Ruchi, on productivity, what are we doing to make sure it sustains? I think quite a few things. Some of it obviously is trial and error, as all of us know. But let me talk about things that have worked. So number one, trust-based leadership. It really works for us very well. So to give you an example, how do we start our meetings? My CEO introduced this culture, and every meeting we start with good news, bad news. So we all have to share what do we have as a good news. It could be just 2 pieces of news, It could just be, hey, I had 100% people show up to work this entire week. I mean, it could be as simple as that. Because like Alok said, we are in suffering mode. All of us are in it together. Or it could, be anything. It could be that, hey, somebody is blessed with a child. Or it could be that, their school stayed open all week. Hey, that's a great. Or it could be very serious matters like we, delivered at X client or Y client and really well. Or bad news, where do you need help? Right? It could be that I'm not doing so well in a certain project, therefore I require more hands, or, it could be anything. Or it could be that I'm mentally not feeling very good. Can I have a mental well-being day? I mean, it can be anything, and we start our days with that. That I think makes hell of a lot of difference, because those meetings are on Mondays. It sets the tone for the entire week. So us, that I would say is number one. Second, I would say a lot of governance in terms of systems, tools, which all my colleagues have spoken here. Learning, definitely, you know how passionate I am about learning. Therefore, ton of learning that we've put into place, and we've invested in our frontline managers. What we've realized during the pandemic is, yes, it's good to have, great systems, tools, processes, systems in place. But if your frontline managers don't know how, it's useless. So we're investing a lot in our frontline managers, and we are giving them training similar to what Alok said, but we are giving them training in critical thinking, empathetic listening. Those are aspects that we are not anymore shying away and actually pointing our compass towards. Other few things that I think is centralized, fast decision making. Removing the red tape. I mean, why do you need to write to me for X, Y, or Z topic, which in the past used to happen? All for me to say approved? Is it really required? So we questioned many of those processes and we re-engineered them. Then, of course, we did a lot of timely R&Rs instantaneously. Today, you did a good job today. Don't wait for a quarterly or a monthly, right? So kudos. Then we also introduced cheers for peers. We many a times forget that our peer also is suffering as much as we are, perhaps. So make sure that we reward and award and recognize them. Last but not the least, I think, is in terms of communities. I remember in the initial conversation discussed about it just a wee bit. So we introduced communities. Now, communities could be very thought-provoking communities, like, all agile learners coming together, medical coders coming together. Or it could also be fun aspects. We introduced something like hobby clubs. We did badminton clubs. So now like-minded people started coming together. Now it also helped us, by the way, even in retention, because the secret sauce is, if I have a community, even outside of work that I engage with, I will think twice before I do anything at my workplace. So those communities also helped us in that manner. In terms of communication, I want to say one more thing is, in terms of communication, we stopped those, emails. Well, they have to go, communication has to happen, but we adapted new ways. For example, we now do communication, which is regular, is in the form of a comic strip, where we have a person that's HR and an employee asking questions. It's the same content, but in a dialogue format. So people tend to read it when it's, like all of us did when we were children. We loved reading comic books, and let's not talk about my husband, who enjoys them even today. So yeah, we introduced many of those different type of communication, video enabled, of course, gamified, of course. We put all our learning, we give badges to our employees as they finish learning. So obviously, whoever collects the number of badges, there's a hoo-ha about it. So it's quite a lot of these ways of sustaining, introducing and reinventing ourselves, I would say.
Wonderful, Ekta. I think there are so many points even I've noted down, and probably to take back. One thing is clear. I think the last two questions we all discussed as a panel on flexibility as well as well-being, there is just such a clear, strong connection in the two, in terms of how, when we talk about flexibility, what does it mean? It's not just about where you work and all of that, but it's also about being able to create that space, as well as, blending it with, some of these community-based activities that you said. I think for us, my own experience, our employee resource groups as a part of our diversity, inclusion, belonging efforts, those have been very strong communities as well. For parents, so we have something known as families at LinkedIn. We have women at LinkedIn. So how do, what are the things that parents are new parents or, parents of preteens or teenagers, coming together. So I think this community building and also things like, we have something at LinkedIn known as Lift Up, where we also have no meetings days. So once a month, we'll have a no meeting day. So you can at least not have so many Zoom meetings and just clear your inbox. And that's globally. So, you don't have any email traffic coming in. So I think flexibility also means different things. And that the way we look at flexibility is clearly, really helping impact, looking at employee well-being in that way. So that's great. And of course, you spoke about first-line managers. I think that's such a key point, because that makes a big difference, because our data also tells us that employees who recommend their managers are 2.3x likely to be more engaged, as well as 2x more likely to stay within the organization. And as we talk about retention and staying, I think with that, I'll pivot to the next question, which is really around the great reshuffle that we're seeing and the kind of movements. In fact, I think Miten called out a stat about 80 or 82% of people are looking at moving, or there's a lot of role change that's going on. So let me ask you, Anirvan, when we are talking about these rising attrition rates across the globe, what are the core strategies that you think you are looking at doing to deal with this? Tell us a little more about just this increasing attrition rates and how you're looking at hiring as well as retention, both ways.
Okay, so I think we have all read the literature, and it's even now got a name. It's called the Great Resignation, right? And it's a global phenomenon. I think before we start saying what we will do about them, we need to understand it. Why has this happened? So I think part of it is about a lot of the demand getting pent up over a period of time, because people became conservative, didn't want to spend money, be it on a promoter launching a new real estate development, or be it somebody launching their own digital initiative in the company. They just became conservative in spending. And now that demand has come all together, right? So there's a big demand uncoiling that's happened. The second is that, and specifically within the IT industry where I belong to, there is a supply-demand imbalance which comes from a break in the continuity of technology. This happens once in a while. For a long time, for 10 years, we were doing one same kind of technology over and over again. And there were new technologies coming through, but these emerging technologies had still not gone up that hype curve that Gartner keeps talking about. But now suddenly they have achieved that critical mass. We are in that plateau of reality with them, with cloud convergence and IT/OT transformation and Internet of Things and all of that. It's part of that fourth industrial revolution, and it's picking critical mass. And we do not have the skills, of that. In India in particular, but in the IT industry globally in general, we are generally people who are very good at being agile and learning, right? And I am pretty sure that the industry is rising to the occasion, and we are having new kinds of learning programs and new people who will have the new skills, but it will take some time because the gap is large this time. And therefore, this technology discontinuity is creating that supply-demand gap, okay? And then the third and final aspect is that people have been cooped up for a long time. Some of the connects, which I said, is one of the challenges that while we may do all these things to be connected in a virtual world, ultimately there is an element of the physical world which is important. And that's why so many organizations, I think, are having active back to office plans, though in a very calibrated and thought through way. That's what we are following. And it's important to get that cultural element of the organization and that organic connect back in a calibrated way and in some form and shape, and get that intensity high, right? So I think these are, the three reasons that's kind of driving this whole, great resignation to some extent. And I think what organizations need to do and what we are doing is that there are two aspects to it, at some level and at junior levels in particular. Sometimes it's a very transactional kind of a conversation, around a role, a compensation, a rotation, and so on and so forth. And what can we do, to retain? And obviously, if you are waiting for the person to resign, then you are already too late in the game. In most cases, the key is that can you identify the levers of disengagement early and therefore engage with that person and have a plan in place early? The other key thing in microland that we believe in is to create a high trust, high performance culture. If we have high trust in the reporting dyads between the manager and the employee, and if you like, the skip level and an ecosystem around the employee, in that case, it is always possible to work out proper career plans for the employee so that the employee, or the microlander, as we call them in microland, actually has a way to grow and therefore is not feeling under pressure that, oh my God, this is just another job, and therefore, why don't I take another job which just seems to be paying a little bit more? That kind of thinking will not be there because there is a long-term growth that this person is seeing. Now, that can only happen if there's trust. If there is no trust, if there's alienation in the workplace, that doesn't work. And neither the employee gives himself, herself a chance to do that, nor does the manager get a chance to work the plans for the employee. So a lot of the focus, on retention would be around designing programs, policies, and compensation for targeted talent segment in a way that makes most sense for them, while at the same time creating a high trust culture overall. And that's what we are focused on.
Thank you, Anirudh. What I hear from you is, I think, towards the end, what you actually spoke about in the high trust culture, I think it's important to also create a very clear career path visualization for an employee, so that even we can look at, yes, we can look at internal mobility as well. I think this has just been such a rich conversation, and we've got so much out of it. I really feel that there's so much more still to cover, but we just have a few minutes left. I do see there is maybe if we can just do a rapid fire, and any one of you can take this question. I see one question in the chat. What are the plans for the organization to keep up with employee talents being away from office? Yeah, so maybe Kavita, would you want to just take this? What are the plans of the organization to keep up with the employee talents being away from office? Is this, Mithun, is this question from Satish? Is there? Okay, Kavita, any thoughts that you have? I'm also trying to get more clarification on this.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a culmination of what all of us have been speaking about for the last 45 minutes. That's what you would do to stay connected with the talent, right? And I think one of the things that really is coming to the fore is the existing culture of the organization. How did we really treat people before the pandemic, and how did you continue to treat them during the pandemic? It isn't something that we can overnight create and say, hey, you are going to have an amazing life, just continue working with us, right? It's what has been built over the last few years, and as long as the organization has been in place. So at UST, the human or the person has always been at the center of everything that we do. Our purpose has always been transforming lives of our employees, of our clients, and of the world around us. And that continues irrespective of whether there is a pandemic or not, irrespective of whether the person is in the physical space or in the virtual place, whether he's at campus or he's at home, or chilling at a mountain or the beach, as Mithun suggested when he started off, and then working. So it really doesn't matter. So I think that's very, very important. As long as organizations stay true to their culture and have invested in their people and in their purpose right from the beginning and continue to do so, then it doesn't matter where the person is, because the person is then tied to that shared belief, right? And that's what I believe is going to be the most important, right? If you have that shared purpose, you then go beyond the corporate message, right? You are then affecting actual behavioral change, and embrace the idea of hyper flexibility. It's come to stay. People have almost tasted the blood, as they would say, right? So they know that you can do multiple things. I think as organizations, it's only fair that we accept it and change. We managed the change very well during the pandemic. We now need to see how the new normal becomes the regular normal for all of us.
That's true. Thank you, Kavita. And it's just been so enriching listening to all of you. Let me hand this time back over to Mithun, to bring this to a close because we are almost at time.
Thank you, Ruchi. Indeed, very interesting conversation. What I really love the most is the perception that comes in from so much of experience, and it does open doors for many and much more things coming ahead for the employees. So I think overall, it's been a session that has given so much more information, given you a little heads up about what things look like in the coming future. I quickly want to thank once again all our panelists. I want to thank Mr. Alok Mehta, Ms. Ekta Singh, Ms. Kavita Kurup, Mr. Anirvan Mukherjee, and of course, Ms. Ruchi Anand for being an amazing moderator. And thank you all. I wish you all great and all the best for the year 2022. Now, look at the date today. Today is 22nd February 2022. Now, if you do the tally, it's 22022022. This is a day that talks about the future, and something like that will come only next year now, when it heads on to 3-3. So thank you again for your time, and I wish you all great luck. Keep everything going ahead for all the employees, and I thank you for watching us, being here. Just a quick thing I want to wrap up with. In the awe of reinventing, it's just not the organization that plays the key role, but you, as an employee, have to play a role as well. It goes hand in hand. The thought will have a feedback that will be generated post session is over. I hope you had a great time. My name is Mithun Upadhyay, and I wish you great luck. Keep it up, keep going. Thank you again.
Thank you.